we want to welcome everyone to the last seminar of this semester of covering environments at the Controlled Environment Agriculture Center. And I'm Gene Giacomelli, and it's my pleasure to introduce today our special speaker, Dr. Merle Jensen, who, for those I don't know online or they're out there, I thank you for 35 or 40 people that are out there right now from all over the world. Realize that a very special cake and heavy cake, so I hope everybody is very hungry here, in the shape of the Sawtooth Greenhouse, the very first greenhouse that was built here for the Controlled Environment Ag Center, and that was here before I came by about a year, and in 2000, and that was Merle Jensen's doing to get that started, and it became the first laboratory for Dr. Rohrbaugh and Dr. Jensen, at least at that time's class, but now it's really Pat Rohrbaugh's Plant Science 217, the introduction to hydroponics and controlled environment agriculture. And it's still there. It's still doing well 15 years later. And now we can have our memory of it in the form of a cake. And later on, your stomach can have a memory of it in the form of a slice of cake, we hope. I think we're about ready to go. Dave, I hope we're on. Good. Merle Jensen, come on up. A very special man. A lot of us are here today in this program because of Merle Jensen. I know I was enticed to this great part of the country from the Northeast, and those out there on the web know where that is, who might be listening from New Jersey right now, and to develop, to take the vision that Merle had about education, about controlled environment agriculture in education, and the research that needs to go along with it to enhance the knowledge. And that's where we are today. But we're going to have the opportunity, I hope, to look back. And should I say, you'll say all the places you keep private schools, or should I?
Yeah, I'll go through that.
You'll go through that. Okay. Merle's been around, let's put it that way. And I could keep going and going, but I probably should not. You heard him just shake his head, right? You saw, no more, Gene. That's enough. Anyway, Dr. Merle Jensen talking about a new agricultural revolution that's been around for a long time, but is really, really taking off. Okay. Merle Jensen.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Gene, and thank you so much for many of you who I've known for many years that are all very special to me. And so this lecture that I'm going to do has taken 52 years to prepare. And, you know, we started when we still had slide rules. We started before we had computers. I remember when I worked in Abu Dhabi, we took 2 weeks for a letter to get there. We had one phone in the country. I always made sure that he had a box of vegetables because he owed me one when we needed to get on a phone. We'd use telex a lot, and we'd really sort of abbreviate the words, and when the recipient would get those messages, they couldn't understand it. It was like because we just didn't write the whole word out. But anyway, we come a long way since then, and the amazing thing was that I would say this, that when I came on board to work in this area, plastics had just come on the market in the late 1950s. And so when I went to Cornell University, I started, let me just go back a little bit. I grew up on a small farm in Washington State. Never had a clue that I would ever go on to college. But anyway, on that farm, and I decided to go to Washington State University, was there for 1 year, then went in the Navy and went back, got married, settled down, went back to Washington State, redeemed myself, and then went on to Cal Poly. And then from Cal Poly, I went to a place that I've always wanted to go to because I had a professor at Washington State that I was so impressed with, and that was Cornell University. And so we packed up, Sharon and I, with our daughter that was about 4 months old, packed up in our little Chevy 2, which I still have today. And we went in the winter time into Ithaca, New York. It was snow, snow, snow along the way. So I'm going to get into my talk. This photograph you see here was taken on April 18, 19, what year, Sharon? 64, right, 1964. It was a serious situation because my thesis was in those tubes. And they were air-supported tubes. And when I got into Cornell, I had no clue about greenhouse agriculture, except I know my family, part of my family back in Holland had greenhouses, and it used to develop the long stem rose, and they would furnish the queen when she come to Amsterdam and so forth. So we always heard a lot about that. But anyway, when I got there, my professor, Dr. Ray Sheldrake, very well-known person at that time, gave me 2 proceedings from the first horticulture plastics before they called it horticulture, NAPA, National Agriculture Plastic, before agriculture was called horticulture. And he said, look, this is the way that we're going to do things in growing crops early in the winter. I want you to take this and advance it and see what you can come up with. So I looked at these row covers from San Diego, and I said, let's put air in those covers, and let's put heat in those covers. So I built a chamber that had 2 furnaces, each 60,000 BTUs. And then we had fans in there, 1,000 CFM and a 6,000 CFM. And I blew air down, and I had heat in there, and these covers here were just fine, except that one over there was the control, because that's the way they were doing in San Diego, and it was going to be crushed with the snow. And I had newly planted plants in there, and I was trying to save them, and I did, but was a week later they froze, where the others didn't, because I had heat going through those chambers. So we'll move on here. So this is what it looked like, and that was a lot of work for a master's thesis. But you know, I had professors that really worked their tail off, and he would be very common. Dr. Sheldrake would say, I want you here at 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. He said, we're going to cover greenhouses, and I want you to know how to do that. And so on and on. That's the kind of professors I had. And I give a lot of credit to those professors, starting not only at Washington State, Cal Poly, now at Cornell. You know, what we did was to put air through the tunnels, and what we did was that we'd open those doors at the end of the tunnels that were 155 foot long, and we could change the flow of air depending on what fan I had and how open much we made the door. Now, people would say, well, how much air pressure did you have? I didn't know what a manometer was, so I just picked my daughter up, who now is 52 years of age, and that's Debbie, a 1.5-year-old, about 30 pounds, and we had a lot of pressure, and it would take a lot of wind. And I hope she now teaches physics and astronomy at a private school next to Stanford, and I hope she's watching at this moment. But this is what really got my attention. We grew, by the way, we had tomatoes growing also under these covers. We had plastic, and I said to my instructor, Dr. Sheldrake, I said, how are we going to water these plants under this? He said, well, just put a dew hose under there. They call that drip irrigation now. And he said, put fertilizers through that. Hey, that's a great idea. So that's what I did. And anyway, but here we didn't have the plastic tubing. But you see that we planted these in April. And what happened was, or these were planted actually in May. I took this in June, but the first months of harvest, starting in July, and then the first month, with no plastic mulch, we had 756 melons per hectare. But if we could warm the soil, which melon loves warm soil, you can see then we had 13,200. Wow, what an increase in yield. And that said, you know, what are we going to, what can we do in the future? This is a profession that I really want to get into. So that was my beginning, being introduced to what I would call controlled environment agriculture. That work was published in the American Farm Journal magazine, went through the nation, and I had a real honor. I was picked to do a special symposium at the 17th International Horticulture Congress at the University of Maryland to present this work. So I got off on a really good start, and Dr. Sheldrake and I did that together. I got accepted at Rutgers University. They were looking for someone to introduce the greenhouse vegetable production to the state of New Jersey. And by golly, they would pay me $7,000 to be a 3/4 time extension specialist and at the same time be able to get my degree in 3 years. You know, I remember working Christmas Day. You know, plants, they continue to eat on Christmas Day, and you got to feed them and all those kind of things. But the scourge of the industry was tobacco mosaic virus. That was really severe stuff, and I can tell you, you could just absolutely destroy a crop if you didn't clean the soil, steam sterilize it, wash your hands, clean the seed. It was a very big detriment to the industry, and I had to do something about it. What happens is that it colors the fruit, and everything just collapsed. Well, this is how the boilers used to look in heating greenhouses in the state of Ohio. And they had these boilers to heat, but also they would make steam with these boilers, and they would take that steam and put it under tarps into tile in the ground to steam the soil. But what happened was that, and the roots grew below that steam there, they got the virus again. And so it was only a partial control for early yield. And if you didn't have boilers and you had flowers like in California, you had a traveling boiler. Now what that person you see there is Professor Bill Roberts. He's a legend. He was my partner, engineer before, and I was a horticulturist, so we had a team. And so I was at Rutgers. He was a very important part of my career because you can't do it alone. You got to have good engineering in the back. When I went to Rutgers, they said, well, this is how we do it. You got to steam your greenhouse. So we had the steam jenny, as you see in the back there, and then we had a tube going over, and I put tarps on and it steamed, and it took about 5 hours to do that little bit. And I said, no way this is going to work. No way. It's hot. Takes a lot of energy. I'm going to grow into the bad situation, and I got to cure this disease if I'm going to have success. So I said to him, you know what? If this is what you want me to do, I'm out of here. I'm going back to Cal Poly. Now, you always know someone that does the snitching. So I told the snitch, and he went back to my friend. He said, Jensen's going to leave. And the professors came back and said, it's okay. You can go ahead and do it. We know it's a Cornell idea, but you can go ahead and do it at Rutgers. And I only tell that because sometimes you believe very heavily in something, and it's important if you're going to advance the industry. So this is the Cornell peat-like mix developed by Sheldrake and Booley. Professor Booley is still living today. But in those days, we did things in bushels. Peat moss, vermiculite, we added perlite later on. But these are the fertilizers that we had in the soilless mixes that you see in all the nurseries today. So that's what I decided to use. And what I did was to get the plants growing, but I wanted to make sure I was right. So I planted some marigolds in some old soil with, you know, a cow manure and some soil outside and some sand and some peat moss, and compared that to the peat and vermiculite, which was developed at Cornell. And I could see right away one was flowering quicker than the other. And I took a peek, because Dr. Sheldrake would always say, look at the roots. That's where it all begins. So I did, and we looked at the roots. Hey, oxygen. It's all about oxygen and clean conditions. Even though that soil that I had, as you see on the right, was steam sterilized, we had excellent growth. So I was very sure that we were going to be right. So we did. We did what we call trough culture. And later on, Ohio State University decided that they would put that in bags and get that in and out. But I'm showing you right here, there was something very new that happened with this. And it was because of Professor Roberts again. You see, I read an article in Illinois or Iowa where they put white plastic down for corn. It's not economical, but we could really accelerate growth because that light early in the spring would reflect back into the plant, and there's a thing called photosynthesis. Okay? So I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get more light. I'm also going to separate the wet area because a lot of times the ground is wet because of the plastic deteriorating and getting. So I could separate the diseased area from the growing area, control the moisture, have reflection, and guess what? We had that dew hose, which we call drip irrigation in there, and the soilless mix. We made headlines. I'm going to show you we made headlines. And I say we, the ag engineers and we in horticulture made high. It was called a new approach to high yields. And the thing is that it was 100 tons. Now, up to this time, the yields were basically 50 to 60 tons. So now we got 100 tons. And that was in 1 year. We did this in 3 months. But it says the greenhouse illustrates the new production, white opaque plastic covering the ground with a, it says soilless peat and vermiculite, plus clear plastic troughs, plastic water applied through soaker hoses. You see? It was a new beginning in soilless culture, or something we called hydroponics. Hydroponics is basically anytime you add all elements to the plant, this soil mix is only an anchor, and we'll get to more of that later on. Okay, so now I got the greenhouse, and I got to grow in it. And you know, we had so much wood in that greenhouse, I could probably grow good mushrooms. You see, we had 2x6s. This was a design from Rutgers, and it was very typical in those days. A 2x6, and then we put a piece of plastic on it. Then we put a 2x2 on that to separate the next sheet of plastic, and then the second sheet we put a board out with double-headed nails. You can see a lot of work. Also, we had 9 inches of wood there, but we had to have the double layers because we could save a lot of energy by having 2 layers. We could save 40 to 45% of the energy. So I went to Professor Robert. I said, we just got to have more light. Got to have it. I got to get good light. So he said, I'll tell you what. We're not going to put any wood up there except for the rafters. We're going to put 2 sheets, and we're going to put air in between. I said, bad idea. It's my thesis in there. It probably won't work. I don't want to experiment. He said, well, we'll cut a deal. So what he did is that you see, we got rid of the 2x2 and a 1x2. We took the 1x2, put up here. We let the air go around. See? So it was like a mattress, and we had a pump over here putting the air in. You know, it worked really great. So the next time, we got rid of the boards. The first greenhouse was a small greenhouse. This next one, I was the guinea pig, and it worked. You see it all over the world today. Okay, so I wanted to let you know about soilless culture and the work that we did at Rutgers. It was a team effort, and, you know, we were on our way. So on we go. I want to go back to why going to soil mixes or soilless system or hydroponic systems. We can grow. This is in Mexico, in Guadalajara. I work for a very big company. I'll talk about that in a bit. But anyway, we can grow in that crop for about 2 years, and then the soil organisms come. We call them root nibblers, Pythium, Rhizoctonia, all those, okay? So what we have to do is that, well, you're going to steam, you can't steam sterilize. You're going to sterilize, they're going to outlaw methyl bromide pretty soon because bromides are getting into our food chain. So what are you going to do? So we keep growing, and the soil starts to collapse. And I can tell you along the coast of California and Mexico, we got a lot of salt water coming in. We got that in Hermosillo and Quino Bay. We got salt water coming in, and that's collapsing the soil colloid so the water doesn't drain. So that was a big problem. We have a problem. We see this. This is in Indonesia, or Malaysia rather. And when they get enough of this disease, they just move the greenhouse. Well, we can't move greenhouses. We don't have that much land area to do that. But anyway, Phytophthora, nematodes, you know all the diseases that we had. So I was sure we were going in the right direction. This is when I came to the University of Arizona. It was a landmark situation. I worked with a group of physicists. In fact, I came to work at the Institute of Atmospheric Physics. Boy, did that impress my Cal Poly guys. Wow. I didn't even know how to pronounce the word. But anyway, Rockefeller Foundation said, you know what, you got to have an Aggie here with us. You got to have a person that can grow horticulture crops to go along with what you had. What we had is a desalting plant, was designed by the U of A. We take water from the Sea of Cortez, it's Puerto Peñasco, Mexico. But we had engines. We had engines to create electricity. We took the waste heat from those engines to desalt the water. We took the exhaust gases, ran them through catalytic mufflers and charcoal. We could get pure CO2. We had the greenhouses. We blew them up with air. And we did it round and around the air. We kept, once we warmed that area, we conserved water. In fact, in the wintertime, we made more water as the solar still coming down than we used to grow the crops. And boy, did we get a lot of attention on that within almost every magazine in the world, how you could go to a desert seacoast where we figured if you have 20,000 miles of desert seacoast, you can now feed another 1 billion people. We have the sun. We can desalt the water. We got sand because we can do anything with sand. And so we were really riding high. And this was the money from the Office of Saline Water. Stuart Udall was then the Secretary of Interior under Kennedy, and the money for agriculture from the Rockefeller Foundation. You know, the Rockefeller Foundation was very famous in Mexico. It was a very good friend of mine. He ended up being a good friend of mine. He's Dr. Norman Borlaug. And he took that, what he did down at Ciano and Simit, they took that research with the Mexican farmers and went throughout the world of India and Pakistan and changed the world, okay? So it was a great honor to work for the same organization that did that work, the Rockefeller Foundation. But we had to cool. We had to cool those greenhouses, and we had to have a heat exchanger. We would go down deep in the water in there and bring warm water up and spray water over these pads, which is from a company in Sweden. A company in Sweden. And the thing is that we use that, and today, again, another first, University of Arizona now, these pads from Sweden are used in all the greenhouses for evaporative cooling. This is the Munter story. This is the story of what we did in Abu Dhabi. And that, so I just show that because I show a lot of people, they don't believe it. Again, a University of Arizona thing, teamwork, a whole team. When I started at the Environmental Research Lab, we had 10 people. We ended up with 150. And I'm going to introduce you a person in just a bit. So what did I do when I came? I said, I'm going to grow in peat and vermiculite. That's what we did at Rutgers. You know, it's going to work. But, you know, it costs a lot of money to bring peat into Mexico. You got to play a little more deed at the border, you know, and do this and do that. You know, I brought a lot of plastic into Mexico early on because I unfolded it and put it in sleepers of trucks. That's how we got it, under the mattress, you see. But those days are over with now. We're much more professional. Okay, so anyway, we had that. And then I grew in sand, and I would water the plants with fertilizer once a week, and the plants going in the soil mix had cation exchange capacity. They'd grow great in the sand. They wouldn't grow. Because I gave them fertilizer, and then I gave them a drink, the fertilizer washed right out. So then we said, well, why don't we just give them food every time we water? We do that as people. Why can't we do that with plants? Guess what? It worked great. Constant liquid feed. Could you believe that in the Penasco sand we grow eggplant like that? And I could show you many crops, cucumbers, like that. In fact, we introduced the long cucumber to America, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Again, another University of Arizona thing. Okay, so we were ready, and guess what? This is where the term controlled environment started here at the University of Arizona. Controlled environment agriculture or vegetable production started here at the University of Arizona. But we got a letter from a little place called Abu Dhabi. I didn't have a clue. In fact, when our first people came from Abu Dhabi back in the States, the immigration people said, where you been? Abu Dhabi. Don't get smart with us. But you know what? The United States learned about Abu Dhabi because they were the first OPEC nation to stop the oil shipments to the United States in the 70s, okay? So everyone got on to Abu Dhabi real quick. But we got a $3.2 million grant to go to Abu Dhabi to build one of these, what we call power water food facilities on the most barren deserts in the world. And so I said, well, we got to make sure we got the right thing. We're going to grow in sand. I know we got sand in Abu Dhabi, but we got to make sure. So we grew in peat-like gravel and so forth. And, you know, I also grew in a lime rock. Now, my Cornell courses told me that if you grow in a lime rock, that calcium will come out, tie up the phosphorus, and you'll have phosphorus deficiency. So I said, I'll just be smarter than that. I'll take and put melted wax around that kind of material, and I'll grow in that. The reason why we are doing that, and I'm just going to tell you, because Marlon Brown wanted us to do this on TT Aurora in Tahiti, and he had nothing but calcium rock, okay? So we were going to Abu Dhabi, now to Tahiti and so forth. So we did that, and guess what? See the plants on the left? Phosphorus got tied up. It worked. Where we coated it with paraffin coating, beautiful. But I'm not going to do that in Abu Dhabi, so we tried a peat moss and make sure that the sand would work. Everything was the same. So we were ready to go to that country. I wish Jim Riley were here. Jim Riley is sitting there talking to those Bedouins that lived on an island in Barastas. They were little houses made out of palm fronds. Great people, great people. When I was by myself, I was on that island. You know, maybe you go a little local after a while. But I would greet the mayor. You know what I do? I touch noses with them. My nose higher, just like an Eskimo. Oh, they like that. I never do that in front of Americans, but I was one of the gang, okay? And they do anything for me. I found that many times you go in the world, you got to get along with people to get jobs done, and this was new to the people. But anyway, this is where we went, to the most barren area in the Arabian Gulf, and I call that one shot there. This is the three wise men shot. Lots of camels, lots of reporters come in. Every newspaper magazine in the world covered this story. It was a miracle in the desert. We brought big Blackstone Lister engines, 500 brake horsepower, unloaded them in the Gulf with landing craft. As you would take soldiers and land them into the beaches, we had these and we dragged them on skids. Can you imagine? We had 3 of those. They were to generate our power and get the waste heat to run our desalting equipment. That's our desalting equipment. It came out of Wisconsin, Cleaver Books. And in the back, you see the semi-flash system that made the fresh water for us to grow vegetables. Pure sand. There again, calcium carbonate. If you take that calcium carbonate, put it in a beaker, drop acid, it completely bubble away. So what we had to do is keep the pH at 7, because I can't come in and coat all that with wax. So what we did, we kept the pH at 7, and we started growing cucumbers. And you wouldn't believe it, what we got. Every time that ruler had a visit, he'd send them over to us. I took Muhammad Ali around, Senator Fulbright. Senator Fulbright said, you got any turnip greens? I said, we're fresh out. You know, he's from Arkansas. We had everyone, so many people over there. It was just amazing. Yeah, but you see what we're doing. We took the varieties from Europe, the cucumber. You know, they wouldn't eat them. They eat the little cucumber called Beta Alpha. It's becoming very popular now in this country. Cucumbers, they wouldn't eat them. So I had the ruler eat one on TV. We had to stop the people from buying them next morning. They all wanted the cucumber. If I would have had Nixon in there, would have been suspicious. Okay? But anyway, that's what we did. We introduced it to the people with Sheikh Zayed. Tomatoes were from Hawaii, developed under high humidity, hot conditions, and it was working. Met a lot of characters. I met with the emir, the ruler from Ras Al Khaimah, and I saw his body. I said, let's get a photo. So we did. And I brought those hunjas, and I had them home. And a lot of memories from that part of the world. There were 7 Emirates. Put them together, United Arab Emirates. We worked there under the British. We got our visas there with the British when we first went in. We were the first representative for the American government, U.S., University of Arizona, to the country of Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. In fact, we brought a piece of the moon rock to the emir. And those guys from the desert look at that rock and they look at the moon. They said, no, that didn't come. The moon's smaller than the rocks. Eh? So, you know, there was a brand new environment for these people. They came right out of the desert. So that was exciting for us. Took 3 presidents around. Right? The president of Somalia, President Gabon, President Zayed. Lots of machine guns. They're all in the back. I was walking the presidents down through an aisle. We had bananas from Cavendish banana. Beautiful. I'm going to show you this bananas with Carol here in a bit. Beautiful bananas. And we had about 12 plants. I said to the president of Somalia, I said, we're going big competition with you, Mr. President. 12 plants. He gave me a great big hug, and the machine guns came up. You're not supposed to hug a president. Walk down the aisle holding hands. You see, you adapt to the culture really quick. You see what I mean? Especially when they got machine guns. Anyway, very friendly. It was a great, great visit. So onward. So this is the crew that started with the Air Lands Research Center. And it says His Highness Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan. The person these guys were trainees. These 3 guys. We took them down to Penasco. They thought they were Mexicanos. But they spoke a very funny language, these Mexicanos. They spoke Arabic. So we had a lot of fun with that. And then Hamdi Ghafishi, he taught us Arabic. John O'Toole went to work for the Rockefeller Foundation. Hamdi Ghafishi, Dr. Fatis, there's the trees today in Arizona. Dr. Mickey Fatis, Jim Riley, director, a monarch. We always used to say about old Jim, in the old days, it was wooden ships and iron men, okay, on that barren island. We had, one time we ran out, we couldn't get the concrete. We bought 100 wheelbarrows to get the concrete foundations poured. Got lots of story. We don't have time. We'll keep going. Okay. Lord, what's his name? Or I think it was Sir David Llewellyn, worked for British Petroleum. He said, we're going to give a gift to the Shah at the oil terminal in the Persian Gulf. Now, in Arabia, we call it the Arabian Gulf. When you're with the Iran, you call it the Persian Gulf. You get that, you get onto that real quick, okay? So there we built the gift to the Shah, and it was a greenhouse. You can see the oil lines here, right by. In fact, we had to take green number 9 from the golf course to build that green. Boy, did the Brits raise Cain about that. But we built the greenhouse there. And later on during the war with Iraq, Saddam came in to bomb the island, and he missed the greenhouse. Well, he missed the pipeline that hit our greenhouse. I always tell people that's the only greenhouse I ever airmailed. But anyway, we had that, but we spent a lot of time. Those houses getting going was 120, 130 degrees, teaching them how to do this and advance the system. And we grew vegetables like no one had ever seen before, especially the better ones living in these islands in the Persian Gulf. Again, another project that received a lot of attention. Superior Oil came into Arizona. If you go down Country Club Road by the airport, you see it. That site is still there. It's got a foot of sand with a piece of plastic underneath it. I don't know why it's not selling. But anyway, it's still there. And we did that with Superior Oil, and we introduced then the long cucumber to the United States. We're growing in sand in Arabia and so forth. Mexico, let's put plastic down drain, and we're going to conserve water because that's our goal, is to conserve water. So we can water, we can collect the water, recycle that water, and that's what we started doing. And that's when we decided to introduce the long cucumber to America. And we did. And we said, take a look at seedless cucumbers. It's the long cucumber. What you see in the stores today all started. We didn't develop the cucumber, but all of us here at the University of Arizona working on this team. Like I say, when I started that environmental research lab, we had about 10 people. We ended up with 150. We were working all over the world on projects. Well, what happened was that Walt Disney was getting ready to build Epcot, and it was Walt Disney's thing. He wanted to build Future World and World Showcase. Future World would be what was in the future in regarding to agriculture, regarding to energy. And there was a plant pathologist background that was president of the University of California, Irvine, knew about it. He said, you got to go and see those guys at the Environment Research Lab. They've done unbelievable projects. They're growing shrimp and greenhouse. By the way, the shrimp that you buy, the first of it was done in Puerto Penasco, Mexico, in greenhouses. You see it all over the world. Dr. Don Leitner was one of the world's authorities, and so we won't have time to talk about it. But so we went to Epcot. Got a very big contract to do that. And so this is Epcot, Experimental Prototype Community. That's Spaceship Earth. This is where the land pavilion is. That's it right there. You go in there, and you go through the aquaculture. You got Dr. Kevin Fitzsimmons. Raise your hand there, Kevin. We made him the tilapia expert in the world. He travels all over, but he started with us. We brought him there because of his expertise on tilapia. Tilapia is St. Peter's fish. It's the one that Christ fed the multitudes at the Sea of Galilee. The biomass is unbelievable. Remember, he walked on water because the biomass was high. Okay. Anyway, so that's how we do it. So we had to come up with a design, so we did that. So here we had a design. This cost $12,000. We had architecture students. We built banana plants and so forth. Go through the tropical area, go through Kevin's area, tilapia, and then go through the desert and so forth. Anyway, you could see here what we did. This is not coming out right. Sorry. Sometimes the computers don't match. But anyway, it came on a boat right. And what we could do, we had a little looking glass. We could look down and just if you're riding in the boat and see what you could look like. It worked really, really good for us. And so that's what we did. And, my colleagues were the greatest critics. They said, who's going to see agriculture? I said, don't worry, we'll make it dance. You know how many people have been through that show? Conservatively, 135 million people. This is what the University of Arizona has done to introduce agriculture to the world, okay? And I can tell you it's been a major thing for agriculture and what we do. Carol, raise your hand. That's Carol with the bananas. You know, we were growing those bananas in 1 foot of sand. 1 foot. We had big produce people getting these banana clusters weighed over 100 pounds, would take them into shows throughout the United States. Sweet potatoes, all again in 1 foot of sand. So this is hydroponics. Even Louisiana State University came out and said, how can you grow sugarcane in pure sand in only 1 foot and it's 16 foot tall? That's what we did there. These little kids just couldn't believe it. The kids were in such awe. We had moving things. I'll show you in a moment. The next one I'll show you what we developed this. And this is Carol again with our aeroponics. You see all these terms, aeroponics? You know where it came from now, don't you? It's from our team, isn't it? And so we could grow lettuce and increase the growth. And one of our students, now Tim, is working on a similar system. And this is all going to be automated in the future because we won't have people working in the fields, we think, in the future. But this is what we did. We developed these hollow tubes, and they would move. They would move. In the middle, we had water hyacinths. We did all that at the airport. And I remember those little kids would follow those tubes and fall right in the drink, and I had to dig them out from under the water hyacinths. We knew we had a show, in spite of our colleagues. Okay, and you can see these are the tubes that are growing, and then we would switch them out and put them on there and so forth. Anyway, we're always interested in the high frontier because we think that's, and Dr. Jackie Mully is doing tremendous work with that, with the lunar program. But this was a spinning drum. Boy, they didn't get a lot of attention. It would spin 60 revolutions a minute. It was in a stationary thing. It would spin and the roots would go out and people said, what did it look like? And I said, like Phyllis Diller's hair. Okay? Anyway, we did that. I'm going to tell you something a lot of people don't know. The biosphere came here because of this project. People don't know that. Let me tell you why. There was a reporter by Jane Brody that came out to talk about our work, and this is in New York Times. It says, outwitting nature to produce more food. And it goes on, the article. See that? Life magazine put it in. See that? Okay? The propaganda arm to the Soviet Union was a magazine called America. Soviets sent it one to us called Soviet Life. And the Soviet Life was a whole thing about Bias 3, where they locked people into a big kind of container in Siberia. And so Ed Bass, I think, and his group from the biosphere went up to the Soviet Union, and they said, you don't need to come here. You got it right at the University of Arizona. That's the combination of those two articles that went to Russia, to the Soviet Union. So a lot of people don't know that, but now you know the other side of the story. Okay? So we'll go on. So we had that drum, and next thing you know, Boeing calls me, and they said, we just did a rendering. And they found out, they saw this on TV. We had a lot of TV work done, and they saw this, and they built a rendering as a proposed idea to create gravity to grow food in space. But the spinning created too much unlevelness in the spacecraft itself. It caused too much problem, so that never did go. But anyway, I'd like to show this because of our work, we at the University of Arizona got to know a lot of astronauts, because even astronauts fit, whose innovative work has already made the cool green hills of Earth even more beautiful and green, with my very best wishes to a fellow space enthusiast, Joe Allen. So it was fun. We had a lot of fun, didn't we, Carol? So anyway, I'm going to show you another project at University of Arizona, and Carol was involved with this. She took her ideas to the Cuisinart Resort. Lee Rizzuto had saw that down there, and he came to me and he said, we got to have that down here in this resort in Anguilla. So Carol, you come on board. She was going to school, so she took a team of students, and they landscaped this and brought a lot of plants from Miami on barges, had to dig through the coral, make the big things. And they did this, and they won the top award in the United States. Not only that, we designed the greenhouse. And you see, we had the greenhouse, and people come to that resort just for the fresh veggies, just for the fresh veggies. What do we grow in that sand or in that perlite under those hot conditions is here. So we'll go on. What also has come from out of the Epcot thing was now farm markets, destination farm markets. And here they are inside. But what they have done is that they have the market there. They grow, but you can go on a platform, I'll show you, and you can see that there, and they can drink their cappuccino when the snow is 4 foot outside in Hopkinton, Massachusetts. And we always make sure that we got the fans blowing here over the base so they get the smells. You see, we learned a lot about Disney, the 5 senses, and smell was one of them. And so this is now going into farm market ideas. What happened then, we got a call from the World Bank, and they said, we'd like to have you go over. We're loaning Morocco $50 million, and we want you to go there and show how to grow. And so we want you to do an experiment station so they know how best to use the $50 million. So we did that. Okay, we went over there. And you see this equipment that came out of California. We designed the skids. The skids were designed to fit through a door of a 707. If I shipped it over there by ship, it would take forever. Also, if I could get this into the airport in Morocco, I didn't have to pay the mordida as if it came on a ship. You need to learn a lot of things. I also go down, I always wore a tie. Looked really professional. I could get by a lot easier that way. So that fit on the 747. This is an injector system and so forth. And anyway, the water pressure for that whole experimental farm, the water was coming from a dam called Hissandu, and that water would be pumped to a 300-foot tower. And what happened is when that valve would shut off, we had a hammer lock on that. It took my filter and blew parts over 200 foot away. All my workers ran away because they thought it was Polisario coming in from Algeria. So I had to find the parts, find the workers, get it all fit together, get John Grow over there to stop the water hammer, and we made it. We made it. Took me a little while to get paid, but I got Morris Udall help me. He said he was going to go to the UN and complain. So anyway, I like that Democrat a lot, you know. Yeah, he helped me a lot. Sometimes you have to do that to get things done. So this is what we did. We brought drip systems to Morocco. You know, remember this all started at Cornell many years ago, and we didn't have scales to weigh. We didn't have the money, so I drilled these holes, put tomatoes through them, went down to the druggist, weighed the tomatoes, went through each hole, and that told us not only the number of tomatoes but how to figure out the weights. Okay, improvise. The Dutch heard about us. They came to the desert. They knew about photosynthesis. They came to the desert where we had the best light in the world, and this is in Wilcox, Arizona. So that is a result of all this work, and now we got really good boilers. You see that? Remember the ones I showed you from Ohio? And we got the pipes, and we got the wherewithal. Unbelievable, these food factories. Remember I said we used to produce 50 ton an acre. We're now upward of almost 400 ton an acre per year with tomatoes. Let me tell you something. Growing crops this way with this technology, bringing only $1 a pound wholesale to the farmer, 60 kilos per square meter, and that's about 150 pounds. We can do that easy. The payback for every gallon of water is 20 cents. 20 cents. You know what it is for alfalfa or cotton? 1/1000th of 1 penny. All documented. Okay, Dr. Jackie Melly can give you those numbers. So is it going to be the future, how we feed the desert? Absolutely, no doubt about it. Okay, cucumbers. This is the cucumber crops. We get them up 16 foot high, get tremendous yields. Now we're getting the small. It took me a long time. These tomatoes were developed by the Israelis, the Palestinians, the Beta Alpha. Kids are now eating these like candy bars. They're that good, and you're seeing them in the market. The National Academy of Scientists came to me and they said, China wants you over there. We want you to go over on our behalf. And then I worked, and then also we had institutions from Beijing, Shanghai, and so forth. And I went over there, my first trip in 1987, and we spent 7 weeks, Sharon and I, and met with 40 top scientists throughout the country. Okay? Went back 3 times. Let me tell you about China. When I went to China, I felt like king. I tell you what, it was chair and took this photo, but banners and up, and I had great translators, etc. It was incredible. I took drip irrigation systems over, seeds, everything. They didn't have it in 1987. They didn't even have a filter. I showed them how to make a filter out of a tin can, put rocks in it, drill holes in it, and I needed stocking. I looked at the mayor's wife from Shenzhen, can I have your stocking? They all froze. They just said, no. The girl said, I'll go to the dorm and get a stocking. Luckily, the mayor thought it was funny. But anyway, but we showed them how to make a filter so they would not plug the drip system. So you got to improvise. This is what we did. We took chicken waste and cinders from coal. We started mixing that. Oh, about 10 years ago, about 15 years ago, they already had about 10 or 11 acres. Right now, we're upward of 25,000 acres in Agobe of the systems we developed there starting in 1987. But I'm going to show you something more remarkable. By the way, the World Bank I did went in hardcover and softcover, 2,500 copies went throughout China. And I'm proud of that because it's, it's feeding people. But I'm going to show you this area right here. You won't believe it. You're going to see that spot there and that spot right there. And that spot right there is a city of 9 million people. We're going to enlarge it. There's the city of Weifang. There is an area there. And I'm going to show you what it is. It's greenhouse. It's solid greenhouse. Solid greenhouse. 866,000 hectares in one area, 2.1 million pounds. 1/4 of all the vegetables consumed are growing right here. I had a chance to go visit that. They took me right to the middle of it. And you know what? I saw those cooling pads, and I saw aeroponics, and I saw all of that, which we introduced in 1987. They are good at copying things, and I was happy to see it. Okay? Onward we go. When I went there was 0.7 pounds coming from greenhouses per person. Right now it's roughly 150 kilograms per person. And they're going to hydroponic soil system because the soils have been contaminated with arsenic as a way to fight pests. And people have a lot of poisoning, and that's changing very quickly. So again, the University of Arizona made its mark at in the country of China. Mexico, gosh, we didn't have to go to Sri Lanka. We got all the things that claim it. Acres and acres of coconuts. And the thing is that coconut produces 80 coconuts every year. You got more cocoa for a growing media. Why not use that? So I guess Dr. Rohrbaugh and I decided that we'd start doing that. We call it Cocoa Pete. In fact, the one that started it down there was one of our students at the University of Arizona, Tim Oderfrein. Went down there. And Pat and I started doing this test, and we had students. We had students come to us, we want to do this. But we did it for a whole year almost, Pat and I, on our Saturdays. We had students come in and take this course. Anyway, that's what we did. And we found out the coconut core gave us great yields, more than the typical rock wool or peatlight. We were really high yields, and they had good water holding capacity, good aeration, lots of good qualities. The water holding was, like rock wool was the common. We had the same thing. Aeration was even better. Remember I said oxygen, very important. Just to show you real quick. Look at the roots. As Dr. Sheldrake said, look at the roots. That's what we did. This company came to us and said, we need help. We just sold paste picante sauce to Campbell Soup, and we're going to get in the greenhouse business in Guadalajara, Mexico. Company called Nature Sweet. Every store you go into, you get the little cherubs and you get the sunburst. That's all from these stores. I worked with them for many years, and universities, Dr. Sherry Kubota has been working with them, and they have now 1,500 acres. Introduced them to Cocoa Core. Guess what? We can really grow great tomatoes. And we learned how to grow them in a very good way so that they're sweet. They're 6.5% to 7% sugar. I used to wear the Nature Sweet shirts in Dallas Fort Worth. I've had ladies stop to me and say, are you the person that grows those tomatoes? I said, well, I'm one of them. She said, well, I have to tell my kids if they don't finish their dinner, they can't have any more tomatoes. That's what we like, see? That's where we're going. So that's what we like. Okay, so here we are. This is where Dr. Kubota comes in. This is not Dr. Kubota, but this is what happens with a disease called fusarium. Okay? So what we did, they started, I didn't do it, they did, started grafting. they probably read Dr. Kubota's work that she did many years ago in Japan. But we take the tame tomato and put it onto a wild rootstock. And the wild one probably came out of Peru and is resistant to diseases. And then we put them in a sweat room where they grow together. We call it the welding process. And then we have a little clip here, and we're ready to go. Disease resistance in the root systems. Not only that, this is a normal root system. This now is the grafted root. Amazing, huh? Dr. Kubota goes all over the United States talking about grafting. It's going to be a lot in the future. Again, another U of A thing. Peppers. Peppers in greenhouses. We don't grow them because they're hollow. You don't wait. We can get more money on tomatoes. But we did this work here. But because of that work, Guatemala called. Guatemala. Wow. Did a lot of work in Mexico. And I want to introduce you, Jose Guerrera here. He's one of our students. He was the one that helped us a lot. He's a PhD from the University of Arizona, right? Go Wildcats, right? Yeah, you bet. Okay, so anyway, now we're going to Guatemala, and they started getting the pepper production. And we converted them completely to hydroponics from soil. This company, 8 years ago, had 1 container to Miami. Last year, 450. When we started with that 1 cater, they were coming to work in bicycles. Now they got mopeds. Didn't that make you feel good? Make you feel good? And so, needless to say, when I go to Guatemala, we get really good treatment. And that's what we do there, and that comes to the United States. The biggest one we built down there is 25 acres for Del Monte. The largest systems of injector systems, computer systems, did enough work that this company gave one to the University of Arizona because we've helped them a lot, okay? So it all comes back home. It's like a hospital. Can't get those, you don't want those diseases from the tropical areas on your feet to get in because you get a lot of trash. Started using high-pressure fog, misting systems. We know that plant has to have so much humidity. We know when the plants wake up. We know when they go to sleep. We know when they're working. We do all that. I borrowed some equipment from Dr. Kubota. She knows this. And we found all this information. Let me show you something. We know that if the temperature, humidity is right, and the temperature is here, and you got these numbers in the green, you're making money. But if it's too hot and too low humidity, that water's going out those little pores called stomates so fast that the plant stops working. You put the leaves against it and they're warm. Just like people. They don't perspire. They don't transpire. In fact, they have to transpire. They just shut down. So we know what to do about that. What we do, you can see we got to add water to the air. We can see that this red here is the BPD. We call it BPD. And this is sap flow. We know if we get into the red zone, the plant's not working, you can see what happens. The sap flow stops. The BPD goes up. The plant's not working. We want that sap to be really moving in there. Very important. One in the El Salvador, and I said, it's too dry in here. Plants are not working. We'd say, I said, you got to add water to the air. 1 year later, they came back, 6 growers from El Salvador. This is the great feeling about being a professor. I got the Mexican hug from all 6 of those guys. They said, what are you doing? You're right, doctor, you're right. I said, what do we do? He said, well, what we did, we add water to the air, and we kept track of the hours per week of the right BPD. And then later on, 45, 50 days later, we kept track of the yield. And what we did is move the yield over to the number of hours. And look, the more hours, the more yield. Simple, isn't it? You all understand that. It's very simple. So this is what we do now in these countries, employing people. It's a great thing to do. The greenhouses used to be so short, we'd have to duck to go in them. Now they're so high. This is in Mexico. They go up almost 8 to 9 meters. It's called the chimney effect. The vents, I'm sorry, if you have to go, you can go. But anyway, I'll keep going here. I'm just about through. The greenhouses are so high. You know, I say to students, you see the old chimneys in the old days, how tall they were? What do you think? Oh, they didn't want to pollute the people. No, they didn't worry about the people. They wanted that draft, that chimney effect to keep those forges working. That's why they had that. And we discovered that in greenhouses, okay? So, okay, go on. So this is the single vent, and I always say to people with a single vent, what happens when the wind blows into the vent? You define physics. Heat rises. Now you're going to have the air blow in. So I've been a big factor of not doing this, but doing this. So we compared the two. Whoop, the thing crashed. Are we okay? David? I went back to the beginning. I think Gene did this. Gene Jensen, you're overdue here.
Yeah, well, you were going long there, Merle, but let's keep going. As long as you don't start on the first slide, right? But we have plenty of food here, so we can handle the weekend, really.
Yeah, right.
I want you to start thinking of questions,
you're doing
though.
Great.
We have 60 people online that are watching.
Okay, we're there. Okay, we're there. Thank you. Okay, so what we did...
Dave Bogner comes to the rescue again. Yes, Dave.
We okay? Okay, what we did is to compare these two. If you have outside temperature, these greenhouses, one vent, double vent. 26 degrees, both places. Average high temperature in one 39.9 with the one vent, with the double vent 26. The hours per day of BPD, a tremendous difference. You know, a lot of greenhouse companies are there just to sell steel. When you build it, you're on your own. So there's a tremendous difference. So as a horticulturist, you have to work with the engineers, and they have to work with us in order to understand. Lettuce production, growing in sand. We start growing lettuce. We plant the lettuce at the far end, and we float it to the other end where we harvest it. This is on the ranch of President Fox down at Leon. That's one of his brothers. I worked with them. We missed it. You plant at one end, float at the other end. We harvest the lettuce, and it's packaged and so forth. Basil in the United States, the flotation systems. We found that the more light you have, the more yield. The more light, the more yield. One less light, 1% less yield. You say, what happened here? We didn't have any shade in the greenhouses. The solutions got too hot, didn't have enough oxygen. If I had enough oxygen, it would have been all right. Okay, go on. Did a lot of work in the growth chambers. We found if you chill the solution of lettuce, it won't go to seed. Carol was growing lettuce down in Anguilla at the Cuisinart Resort, 110 degrees. Chill the solution, perfect lettuce. All discovered through basic plant physiology. This is the project that I'm working on right now in Mount Vernon, Washington. Aquaponics, whoever came up with that? 1987, we came up with fish. About the time Kevin came aboard. Had fish, we took the poop of the fish and collected and grew great lettuce. Can't get more organic than that. You can see the difference between the fish and non-fish, inorganic, the same. The trouble is with this, you got to move a lot of water, and we think it will happen someday. There's a lot of energy involved in moving the water, but it's possible. Organics. This is taking food waste and putting it from a food waste at a supermarket and putting it into a liquid in 6 days, have organic fertilizer back on the crop. Dr. Giacomelli is doing this right now with Stacy on this. All kinds of greenhouses to stop the insects from coming in. Work with a lot of small farmers. This small farmers up in Washington State, they sell their tomatoes for $33 a pound, wholesale. They produce 45 pounds a plant. They have 4,000 plants. My Cal Poly math doesn't work that high, but it's about $500,000. They do very well. We've learned how to get the flavor in them. We raise the salt so they got good flavor. And that's what we do here. We work with a lot of small farmers. Dr. Rohrbaugh will have a whole bunch in here in January. We learn how to do marketing. Sharon, my wife Sharon, made the apron for Tricia to do this, and we do taste testing in the markets. I love to talk to the marketing people. I like to talk to the consumer. I said, one word, why are you here? They'll say local. It's all about that. Second word is organic, but local is a big, big deal. So that's a big thing we have learned. I've even worked with very famous chefs in Hawaii. They've come to the farm, showed us how to make salads and different things from our vegetables. This is Sam Choi in Hawaii, and you can see we can do a lot with some imagination. I like to talk about this because this is work that we did many years ago. My first student, Marco Tony Turan, right? Marco, we had these roots, and boy, would those roots grow. We had them get a haircut every week because they grew so fast. And we knew that those roots stopped growing, you get so many tomatoes. So we learned that you had to prune so many tomatoes up to keep the roots keep growing. But anyway, you can't take that to space. It takes a lot of money to take all that. So we started growing. We decided to grow out of a balloon. The roots could stretch it, or this is some of Sharon's Tupperware. You got a quart or a liter wet, and then a 4 liter. No difference. No difference. That's Dr. Rohrbaugh when we did that work with NASA. Look at the yields we had coming out of a quart container. We watered all the time. We checked the pH, we checked the EC. It was unbelievable what we could do. We wrote a lot of books. We had a lot of conferences. I mean, if you got great ideas, you got to bring people in and show them, but also get a few ideas from them. It's an exchange. This conference one I did in Rutgers, this one here, we had 22 countries come to this, 300 people, sponsored by the Rockefeller Foundation here at the University of Arizona. Then we started collecting energy. Rutgers did a lot of work on solar energy. Dr. G can talk a lot about that because he came on board there after I left, and then we saw him away. Brought him here. We had the National Agriculture Plastics Congress here, and Dr. Jackie Melly helped in there. Hydroponics Society, Pat Rohrbaugh. In other words, we told the story. Can't sit on it. Now, I didn't publish it for other scientists to see necessarily. They could come and visit. We published it for the farmers. That's what we do, okay? That's what we do. That's very important. That's what we do here at this facility here, Dr. G and Dr. Kubota and Dr. Rohrbaugh, Dr. Casera. That's what we do. You can read out of a book, but you got to go out and work on that. You know, you don't teach people how to fly and then sell the runways. You see, very important. These are all the books. This is the Puerto Penasco one. This is Abu Dhabi here, and this is Morocco, both in French and English. So publications are important. I won't dwell on this center, but, you know, Dr. Kaltenbach is here. He gave me a lot of rope. He even allowed me to form my own foundation. I think the only one was the medical school, Youth Now Foundation. We did a lot of work in the Middle East, got a lot of funding, and we put that into a lot of ways, and luckily the governor decided to give us a decision package to build this place here. And our students go out of all walks. This is Dr. Jose Chin. He's in California right now. But our students are managers of big operations. Jose now works for Premier Pete Moss out of Canada. He travels to the United States. He's a grower advisor. But our people go in all walks of life. They all get great jobs because they know they not only how to read out of a book, but they know how to apply the necessary things to grow a good food crop. We emulated what we did here in Guatemala. We opened this up 2 years ago. We put 1,000 indigenous people through this every year. Going to go back here. We opened that up. We had 600 people there. Opened that up. We got the whole facilities where we are training people in Latin America. This is a true picture. This is India. Lots of people. 1.2 million people. China has now 1.4 million people. I was there with the Prime Minister when they hit 1 million with the group to meet the Prime Minister Rao, how they're going to feed their people. It's going to take what we do here to do that in the future. It's going to take that. You look back at this spaceship, it's not very big. It's not very big. And, you know, to have a chance to work in over 50 countries and have a dialogue with 120 countries, it's been a good thing. You know, there's nothing like giving a gift of food production. Nothing like it. The ultimate is when that farmer comes back to you, and I'm going to show you a photo from Egypt, where I worked over there I even worked in Egypt with the Israelis on the Camp David Accord. I worked over San Diego State, worked in University of California, and this farmer came up to me and he said, I'm going to show you that photograph of a farmer in Egypt, which tells the story of gratitude, okay? That's it. The best photo I ever taken. I only got 35,000. But this tells the story of what you can do by spreading and teaching people. There's no greater feeling. You know, one time I was traveling with Sharon. Sharon, raise your hand. That's the person that makes it work, I tell you. Right, you know, without her, I wouldn't do it. But I was traveling with Sharon, my 2 daughters. We were stuck. My battery went dead along the coast of Oregon. It was remote. An old couple drove up, and I said, I got jumper cables. Can I jump your car? Oh, no, you can't do it. I said, well, I know what to do. The pluses are red, aren't they, Gene? Pluses are red. Yeah, I did that. You know, my car started. The guy was so happy. I should have charged him money. Nothing like giving. Nothing like giving. I find when people give to a cause like we have here, they're happy. There's nothing like it. Nothing like it. So anyway, with that, I'm through. Thank you so much. I've gone over, but, you know, what can happen?
Excellent, Merle. What did you do in your downtimes? I mean, did you have any? Wow. Well, I was getting really excited there. I thought he was going to pass the plate. He was talking about giving. So everybody out there, please remember that. Questions. Also questions from online. You can type in your questions, and we'll pass them on to Merle.
Yeah.
How about in the audience?
Dr. Kopp, well, raise your hand. Just raise your hand. See, we had a team here that was unbelievable. The dean, and boy, they really represented agriculture, and they allowed this to happen. Okay, but we got to keep it. Nothing like, you know, getting rid of a $100,000 greenhouse every year. It looks on budgets really good, but we're not. You know, we're getting rid of the runways, aren't we?
Merle, this week in the local newspaper, there was an article about the Hohenstein High School site will become a greenhouse. And there's a whole area here of architecture and other land utilization that gets into second generation usage of buildings. Do you have any guidance for either countries or cities or school districts as to how to make this worthwhile to the communities being served?
Dr. G?
Yes.
Well, anyway, go ahead. You know, there's a load to do internationally. There is, right? Is that what we're saying?
Well, it's an opportunity and it's a challenge.
Right. You know, I have designed systems that go on the big Huey helicopters. On one skid, I could put a greenhouse in the remote areas of Afghanistan. And I know we got people, so we're ready to do that. Okay? I want to read something very important here. Jim Rogers, he graduated from the U of A. Very wealthy person. He gave $137 million. $137 million to the College of Law. And he says this. I don't want to forget Dr. Rohrbaugh. Raise your hand, Pat. She believed in me, you know, when we started. I'm going to read what Jim Rogers said. He said, a catastrophe is looming. He just passed away, by the way. The world is going to have a period when we cannot get food at any price in some parts of the world. He added, there will be a huge shift in American society. The stockbrokers are going to be driving taxis, and the smart ones will be driving tractors. Working for smart farmers, instead of getting an MBA, get yourself a farming degree. You'll make a lot more money. It's all about eating. It's called survival, right?
Excellent. And along that line, there's a question from online from someone you might remember very clearly, Dr. Tina Hayden.
Wow.
Yes. Thank you, Tina, for asking this question. And obviously, she's looking for the next business she's going to start. She says, what is the next crop that's going to be in controlled environment that's going to be a big hit, the biggest hit?
Medicinals.
Medicinals.
Vegetable vaccines. Something like that, right? In other words, you won't need a shot. You just take a pill, and it will have the antigen in it to establish the antibodies. No more syringes. We're right around the corner. Right around the corner with that. So much rules and regulations, the most of the work going on in Mexico at Monterey Tech. Yeah.
Merle, I was just wondering about the organic side of greenhouse production. Where is the highest concentration, globally speaking, for the organics? And a very basic question, sorry I don't know this, what's the delivery system for the organic fertilizer? Is it hydroponics, is it aeroponics? What?
No, it's all soilless culture. Soilless culture right now. And most of it's happening in the country, in here, this country, organics, because we have the resources, we have the people that have the purchasing power to pay for that.
And just how much more expensive is it?
Double,
Double?
at least double, yeah. And so we farmers finally figured that out,
Yeah.
double the money, so we're learning how to do that. Yeah, but no, it's coming. But you have to remember the ionic form is the same. It's the pesticides that are important.
So basically it's the type of poison solution?
Well, it's a Hoagland solution that we make organically. Exactly right. We do it. That's exactly right.
So the pests are the big deal, right?
Right.
They're also online, Merle, from North Carolina and from Connecticut, both thanking you for your presentation. They're very appreciative. And then there's a fundamental question, I forget from where, but is about there seemed to be a leveling off of controlled environments applications for a while. I'm going to say that was probably about 5-10 years ago, maybe, and now there's a big resurgence. Can you give us some insight into why that might be?
Because of energy. Energy costs are going down substantially. There's a lot of interest in other ways to grow, like vertical farming and so forth. And you know, the jury is still out on that. It's called economics. But you're going to see a lot more greenhouses going in. But let me tell you something. A lot of our schools have agriculture students that were born in the city. They have no farm experience, like Dr. Kaltenbach and I. We grew up on farms. We know what baling wire will do, right? But anyway, so the thing is that they don't know. And trouble is, a lot of their professors don't know. We have a lot of skills with these professors, Dr. Casera and Dr. Kubota and all, here that know through this experience. And we've had, luckily, we had to get Dr. Casera out of Turkey. We had to get Dr. Kubota out of Japan. They were educated in the state, but they were hands-on people. And so, you know, we're very fortunate to have that kind of people. You're not going to find them easy.
Merle, there was a question about sensors for control. And when are we going to have reliable sensors that are going to tell us everything about the plant, the speaking plant, so that we can better provide the environment that they need?
Dr. Casera, when do you say we're going to do that?
Work has been going on for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
We're coming up with new smart technologies, hopefully soon.
He's got cameras that will move in the greenhouse and look at the plant, and the camera can tell by the color of the leaves whether it's under stress or not. When I get under stress, I get red, you know. Well, plants do other things. So the thing is that we're going to have all those instrumentations. We now can work with computers halfway around the world and adjust things. I've seen growers going down the freeway and something's happening. He can adjust things in his car. Okay? And right now, Dr. Giacomelli is working on a moon project that we can basically one day fly a spaceship to the moon, unload all the equipment to grow food, and 6 months later, the astronauts will have food, and those plants will be producing oxygen, and the astronauts CO2, and now we have a C oxygen, you know, right combination. So all that's ahead, and it's this kind of activity. The space activity has allowed us so much what we have on Spaceship Earth. The medicine, the communication system, even Tang, and all of that has been coming along because of the space effort. And you know, if we come to this country, we can't think about, you know, I know we don't think the world is flat anymore. We're beyond that, right? But there are other things we don't know. And it's that kind of inquisitivity that our students need to have to function and get that brain working. It's not happening today. Well, we want it to happen.
Well, we hope it will continue. Oh, one last question.
I'd like to get an overview or your opinion on utilization of biogas for helping climate control.
Yeah, well, that's a, if the biogas is coming from a carbon source material, are we going to release any of that into the air? It's all about what we release into the air, if I'm right.
No, I'm talking about harvesting
Oh.
biogas to heat a hot water heater or to fuel.
Biogas coming from plants or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, right now that's been really looked at closely because, you got to grow the seeds and you got to fertilize and you got to water and you got to pay for the irrigation. By the time it adds up, compared to fracking, it's a lot cheaper. You see what I mean? It's a lot more expensive, biogas. Climate change, I won't get into that. But more biogas. Can someone answer about the biogas board?
Biogas digesters.
Yeah.
So that we can take whatever organic material.
Yeah.
Throw it away.
Yeah.
Okay, the question,
Yeah. Good. No, that's
the
good.
question is about biogas digesters that produce methane. So
Like waste dumps, maybe.
like sanitary landfills.
Yeah.
Yes, that can produce methane.
Yeah.
That's certainly that technology, the biology and the chemistry of that exists. What still remains, I think you said, to be seen is will it be economic in the near term, or ultimately in the future it will have to be. We expect that.
I gotta answer that a little bit. I think I got it. The biggest waste dump comes out of Minneapolis, and they built it in Iowa. Okay, it's huge. Flaming gas all over the place. We hooked into that with a greenhouse, and we ran engines to put into the electrical grid. Took the heat from the engines and put it into the greenhouse. But we didn't know about all the seagulls that were going to land on our roof and with their sharp toes cut the plastic. We didn't learn about the poop that they have that whitewash the greenhouses. We didn't know about all the dust from the landfill. We didn't know about all the cornfields that were playing 2,4-D. So there were so many challenges, everyone gave up. So we have to go to the landfill and say, no dust, but they do have one in New Jersey. And right now it's down, I understand, right? That when I heard it was down right now at the time, but anyway. But that's where we're going.
I think, Merle, we could sum it up by saying that any new technology brings new challenges, and we solve some problems, and maybe we create some more along the way. But ultimately, we go in the right direction. One last thing, Anna Rijo sends her best to you from Meister about all the things that you've done along the way. She's very appreciative. Thank you, Anna, for being online and listening.
Wow.
We're going to call this to an end here, because we know Dr. J will go all weekend on us. We know that.
Yeah,
Plus, all of you sitting here have an awful lot of cake to try to eat. There's got to be 20 kilos of cake over there.
And I want Sharon to stand up. Sharon, stand up, please.
Sharon, one time,
Yeah.
please. Thank you.
Yeah. And next is Alma Spur. Not Alma Spur, Alma and Cecil. That little Alma, we call her. Alma worked with Colin and I for years, and she dotted the I's and crossed the T's. And Sharon has always corrected my grammar. I still have double negatives. Okay? Okay. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank everyone for attending. We're just as appreciative as that farmer in there for all you've done for us, Merle. Thank you. Let's have some more food and go enjoy our weekend. And then it's on to final exams next week. This is the last presentation for this semester. We'll see everyone out there next year.
I want to show one more thing.
No, we cut you off, Merle.
Okay.
That's it. No more.
I want to show you one more thing. I have to do it. Some people collect matchbook covers. Some collect, salt and pepper shakers. Every talk I've given in the world, I've kept the sticker. So I want to share that with you. That's all the talks.